Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Coco, for everything.
Thank you.
This is the first exhibition that we do together at the gallery. And so Simon is joining us for this conversation. Simon's organized exhibitions with you. You did the show at MEP 2019. And Simon is the expert because he wrote many texts and published books on Coco's work. It's a bit too serious to start with. I'll just say that the exhibition that is presented in both galleries, there's two things, and that would be my first question. I call them, in a very serious way, continuity between your personal research practice and how it blends with editorial or assignment works. On purpose, I don't call them commercial because I have the hope that the art is also commercial, you know, as a gallery. And diversity because, as you can see, we're presenting works that you made over the past few years. There's paintings on canvas, paintings on sails, photographs, texts, sculpture, drawing, how do you, in your work, in your daily life or your work, how do you balance all these techniques through all the different contexts?
That's a difficult question.
Yeah.
I guess there is not a simple answer, and there is not an answer that works for every time. My background is in photography. Mm-hmm. I studied photography. I did my master's in photography, and I paid for my studies in photography by working as a photographer. Yeah. So by the time I did all that, I have spent 5 years studying photography in depth, but also working as a photographer. So at some point, photography was kind of, well, it's starting to be a bit boring, right? Yeah. If you do, at least for me, I like, well, maybe not for you guys who always love photography, but I like trying many things. So I guess it comes from a need to really try and explore. I guess things being perfect is never been my aim. Yeah, I think like my work is a reflection of my life, and in the sense that I like to try many things. I like to travel, I like to discover things. So in art, I feel the equivalent to that is to try as many media as possible. It's not always straightforward. In some moments of my life, I'm more focused in photography. In other times, I'm more focused in painting. But it's true that when one of the media overwhelm me, I just jump to doing something different. Perhaps I need that freedom to go from one thing to the next, which I have like this one quote that goes a bit of everything, a lot of nothing. A lot of the time I'm left with the sensation that I'm never gonna be good enough at any one thing. But I guess I like to always open the question, is like perfecting something the aim of an artist, or is it really about exploring and opening questions?
The exhibition at MEP, several of the works that we're showing in the exhibition here, they were already at MEP, but the practice really evolved. When you started collaborating, especially on the exhibition at MEP, what was the angle, or what was the title of the exhibition was Busy Living?
And the rest of it was?
There was a subtitle.
Yeah, it was everything with everyone, everywhere, all of the time. So I guess it's again like a note on that ambition to really be very alive and awake and trying to see and experience as many things as possible.
I mean, one of the first reasons, one of the things that was amazing about showing Coco at the photography museum was that I was so happy I could put loads of paintings and annoy the hell out of all the people who were expecting to see a photography show. But also your word, like continuity, it's a really good one. I mean, there are, I would say continuity, but I would also say like obsessions and returns to the same ideas. there were some really large blue text paintings in that show, which is not exactly the same, but
different shade of blue.
Yeah, different blues and a different text. But I love the fact that you could have a room, as we had in that show, where you had swimmers, like large, quite classical portraits of swimmers, and this huge painting about water. And I love this in your work. I mean, I'm a total fan. I'm not very objective. I love these connections between what are visually very different objects. And I think this is absolutely, I'm really like happy I'm sitting in front of this piece. It's a fantastic piece. And can you just say, because for everybody here, so you have all these obsessions and connections. One of them is boats and sailing. And your house is full of books about boats, little models of boats. Your studio has boat sails. How did you, can you say a little bit about starting work with the sails? Because I think that's really something that maybe people here haven't seen before.
Yeah, well, I always loved the nautical wear. My mother is sitting here today with us, so she probably had the first experience of how many times, being very young, all I did was collages, and I will find like crops of boats in magazines, and I will stick them together. Not sure why, but I had that need of like collecting the things that I wanted. I think like most artists are also collectors. And I guess, I don't know, like, I don't have my own big boat, but it's this idea that it doesn't matter, you can still make your own and enjoy, well, all the things that you enjoy by creating, bringing a part of them with you. The obsession with sailing, well, the sea represents many things to me. It's a land of freedom, but I think like when I was really young, again, I went to the Scouts. I really enjoyed that because it reinforced the idea of community. I think in a generation in which that is getting lost and we are also isolated, I think I found a lot of comfort on this idea of a group of people that are together. You know, maybe my friends at the Scouts, we weren't necessarily like aligning in ideas, but we love going hiking, we love exploring, and sometimes that is enough of a reason to stick with a group of people. So when I think about the boat, it's the same, it's kind of like a similar experience. It's a group of people. Like when you are sailing, the boat becomes your universe, your little country. You only have the people who are around you, and you're not necessarily there with them because they are your best friends. In some cases they may be. You are there with them because you have a destination in common and a point of departure in common. And I think there is a lot of beauty on that. How can I build like a micro society with those who happen to be around me for no necessarily a very specific reason, or even sometimes you don't choose who's coming with you to the trips, but you have to stick together. And
just the actual painting on the sails, how did that start? Is it connected with the numbers and the text, or is it the material?
I think because at this point, I had been making so many photographs and so many works about the sea, I just starting to see sails online, and I didn't really understand why, but I had a huge need to acquire them, and I didn't really know what I was...
I mean, refurbished, sails that have been used already.
Yeah, sails that had been used already, and there is so much poetry for me in a sail, right? It's really what it makes a boat move with the wing. It's simple enough, but I think there is something as well. Recently, I was more moved by painting, but starting a painting in a clean canvas is very overwhelming sometimes. There is nothing to comment on. You are starting from zero. And I think there are a lot of things in life, it's not exactly the idea of the ready-made, but there is already a story to pick from, and kind of like the blank canvas is not giving anything to you. Like a good example is that when I got the sail, the process of the sails is I collect the sails and then in some cases sew them together to make a form that can be hung in a wall. But for example, with this sail, I decided I will paint a big wave. and I like finding details in the sails. And I already knew this sail was going to be a tsunami. And then at some point, while I was painting the wave, I realized that the number up there that already came with the sail was 72, which in my kind of like code writing, the 7 stands for the T, and the 2 stands for the S. And I feel if I do that in a blank canvas, I would never find these small details to comment on. So I feel it's not only my work, but it's kind of a conversation with the materials. They're already giving me something. What I find quite magical is that a lot of the time I have an idea, and for example, in this case, I haven't really thought of the 72, but I love when life has these kind of happy coincidences, and I think in many cases it's the work of the artist to discover them.
No, you said once, because there's this figure, this is almost your alter ego, which is this a figure of the lost sailor, that you see in many works in all different forms. And you said once that imagine you're a lost sailor, you're lost at sea, but you're also an artist and a painter, and you run out of paper and canvas. Well, then you look up and there's this big sail, so maybe this becomes the canvas. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few works here, or actually most of the works always comment on that idea. Like this photograph that is behind you is 2 kids. They are in a boat. This was taken in the Caribbean, in a fantastic location, but somehow they are happier about their bucket that they could have in the garden in their house. And it's called a blue
swimming pool in a boat.
In a boat. And I guess like I always have that longing of, I mean, I guess it sounds cliche, but going back to being a child and being very satisfied with these little discoveries, like your dad can have the most amazing yacht, and yet do you care more about your bucket? Yeah. And for me, life, I try for life to be that for me, you know, it's not about the big boat sometimes, it's about the little bucket where you can play with your brother. So yeah, I think I insist a lot on that idea. I guess like something we don't talk about enough, but I think the domestic is really important to me. So I always try to find a lot of, I don't know, like next to it we have the breathable air incorporated, which is a bill for the air that you are breathing. So I always try to mock a little bit things that all of us may encounter in the everyday. I don't think art needs to be about the very grand things or the very expensive things or the newest or an string experience. I think there is a lot of art on a Monday that can turn into a Friday.
Yeah. Do you think we can get one of the books, the new book?
Sure.
From the, I wanted to like just connect with what you were saying about the sales. With the also, I don't know if thank you. This is a new book.
Yes.
It's going to be for sale later if anybody wants to buy one.
You're a great salesman. In both senses.
Salesman. No, I wanted to ask you about writing, because you were talking about the domestic, but I was thinking about the everyday. And what I think is really magical in a lot of what you do is, like, as you say, they're observations, maybe that seem quite everyday or domestic, but what I love in the writing, and the writing is everywhere, and there's, I think Kenta was saying this before, there's even every photograph has a little handwritten caption, and there are these beautiful, after you guys have listened to the talk, there's this beautiful room with very small text pieces like these, when people called while you were out, and writing seems to be so important. I wonder if you could talk about how your writing helps you to draw these things from the everyday. I mean, I guess it's through notebooks, is it through, I mean, how do you write? Do you write all day, every day? It seems so, I mean, there's a lot of writing.
I was commenting with Simon before we started that I realized after the exhibition was mounted that there is an element of text, small or huge, on every single work in the exhibition. There's not a work in both spaces that doesn't carry text.
Ah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I think words are, for me, is my most powerful tool. I don't think it needs to be only exclusive to art, but we communicate through words. We share ideas through words. So for me, it's like a celebration of our capacity to share as humans. That's the primary thing. I was recently on holidays on Dominican Republic, and I went to in Santo Domingo to the Catedral Prima, which is the first cathedral that was built after the invasion, or however you want to see, about Cristobal Colon arriving there. And I went to the Mass. Sometimes I like to go to Mass because I love words and I love sermons. And the first thing they said, the sermon of the day by St. Paul was, at the beginning, was the word. And that really stuck with me, because even to be able to name the light, like at the beginning, God created the light, or if you want to believe that, you still need words to name light, and to name creation. So in a way, it's, I mean, that's the poetic explanation. On another level, I never thought I would become an artist. I was very skilled with words as a kid. I saw myself becoming more like a lawyer, or perhaps a journalist. I had a lot of peace with words, and perhaps it was also my escape universe as a kid. Very soon I realized that if I was uncomfortable in any situation, I didn't need to participate. I could create my own word, and that word that I would create was through words. You know, I could write on my diary, and suddenly my surroundings weren't my surroundings anymore. I could pick up a book, and suddenly I was inside a completely different universe. And I don't think, or at least for me, like, of course, painting is very powerful, but somehow, yeah, words contain everything to me. Where I wanted to say something else.
Which
in
is
that
good
show,
coming from a photographer originally.
Yeah, I think like I started to write, well, we say like, I never intended for the writings to become art. I started to write to think about my ideas, pictures I will take later. The painting you were talking about before, that was the first painting that I think finished. It's all made on words. And the title of that painting is Picture of a Sky Falling into a Blue Sea, or something like that. And the words at the top describe the feeling I get when I look at the sky, and the words on the bottom, the feeling I get when I look at the sea. And the intention behind that painting was saying, you don't need to take a photograph, you can place a photograph in the mind of someone by using words. And I find that quite magic. Also the fact that when I say the word sea, we all see a different sea. Yet we are all able to connect. And I think it's it's very beautiful, because photography is always very concrete. Of course, you can make an interpretation, but it's all there is to see. Words are always open. You can transform them. They transform through age, through cultures, and also I love like mistranslations. So yeah, there is nothing I like more than having a walk in the park or being in the metro and just hearing conversations and getting them a little bit confused. I guess that's my main source of inspiration. But yeah, well, I have many things to say about words, as you can see.
And do you think that these like little mistakes and little misreadings are really important? I mean, it seems like with the sales, reading I didn't immediately, until you read it for me, I didn't immediately read it, and then as soon as you told me what it says, I was like, oh yeah, of course. But you're seeing things very differently. And playing.
Well, I guess like the mistakes I make, I don't do them intentionally. Of course, I always say my work is the result of like my idea, plus my ability, plus my lack of ability. And, you know, like everything I do, like it's always very frustrating because the ideal is often so remote from the reality. But I realized that there is a lot of, I think people tend to connect better with things that feel human rather than made by a machine. We were finishing the boat and my sister was very kindly giving me a hand, and she was just telling me, but why are you so obsessed on it looking made like a machine or like a professional? I think people will enjoy it better if you just let it be as it is, like there is no need for perfection. But I think like in the mistakes people can connect better, and I think it's the same thing with my writings here.
Just came over in that page.
Oh, that's cute. They haven't seen the book yet, so they have no idea.
The left-hand page says, "My sister, always care for her." The right-hand page says, "Call mum, always call mum at least once a week." This isn't art. This is just what you should do.
I try to manage it. It's good to have each other because they call each other more than I do.
I have a serious point to make about that, actually, which is, in a way, the kind of, you were talking about fashion, editorial photography, and in the other show, Rue de l'Ancien Comédie, you have some of these photographs that were taken more for magazine, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I thought when I first saw your work and when I first saw the writing was how that's so at odds with the way that fashion looks want us to think. They want everything to be very clean, very produced, very finished, and then you have this crazy writing, these kind of ideas which are constantly undermining the perfect picture. And I think that's what I thought was really human in your work. It's like, and I feel like, I don't know if I've got to speak for everybody who's here, but when one encounters your work, you have the feeling that there's a warmth behind it, rather than a calculating kind of fashion brain. Yeah.
I think that's what I try to approach, I guess. I think, I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm the only photographer who does that, but I think especially in the recent years, I feel like fashion is looking for more humanity in a way. I think the system is saturated. Many people can take the perfect picture, you know, like we have amazing, incredible, we all have like super cameras on our pockets. And I guess it's not about the most incredible, excellent photo. It's about looking at the small details. And I think there is something very important in the world of fashion and in the world of art. Again, I bring it back to the human. There is, right now we live in a society that is completely saturated by images. So I was a really young photographer trying to make my voice and mark a difference. Really, there are so many other photographers out there that could probably take a better picture than me technically. But the question is, how do you rise? At the time, obviously, I needed photography. It was the way to earn my living. So you really have to think like, okay, how can I raise over this noise? And what I learned through that is that ultimately people connect better with something that has errors, something that feels human. We are not as interested in perfection as we think we are, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I also thought that there's a super interesting thing about the way we have. I mean, because I don't know. Some people here probably arrived when it was too full to read all the little text. But some of them are really about being very lonely, being very lost. Some of them are very funny. So I think this balance of humor and pathos, it's probably not pathos, I don't know the right word, but that is also very refreshing.
Well, I just feel, again, I keep going back to the same point, but I think it's universal, right? So I guess like when I write, I try not to use big words. I think the aim is to remind everyone.
Apart from the Latin ones. Or
well, yeah, you know. Yeah, I I had to overcompensate somehow. But other than my Latin expressions, I just very much love Latin. There is no other explanation. But I think that what I try to say with like the first book, if you see it of Close Your Eyes and Words in Paper, is that no thought is permanent, no feeling is permanent. Sometimes we're gonna have fun, sometimes we're gonna feel lonely, and then we're gonna be laughing. And that is universal. And many of the things I have written here, you could have written, like many of the people in this room could have written. And it's about saying, I'm one of you guys, or please let me be one of you guys, because we really are not so different from each other. We all have similar desires, and we are all human ultimately. So for me, there is no higher or lower. Well, I know you. We just picked you up from Mars, but other than you, everybody else, I don't know. Do I see any new robots? There's such advances in technology these days. You never know. You might see
This might be a stupid question, because it's also in Odéon. There's some really, really fantastic paintings, and you said you don't think you're good at all the things you do, but I think your painting has really evolved a lot, and you're obviously developing that part of your practice. Do you have in your head, because I feel like you don't, but do you have in your head a sense of what's more important to communicate your ideas to the people who look at them? Because I mean, the last show you had, which was at Seville, with Coralie, you had some of these texts on paintings.
On painting.
But for you, does it
on canvas?
Yeah, on canvas. For you, does it make a big difference when you've re-transcribed a text onto a canvas, or is it just fine for someone to read it in the book and?
Some of those texts, for example, they are thought exclusively for the canvas. Mm-hmm. I think some texts, like the note, call my mother at least once a week. I mean, it could also be cute in a canvas, but maybe I need to do it big so I put it on the bed so I don't forget about it. I guess like context, it is very important. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really started to, when I did the big collaborations with Gucci, the big thing about that is that you could have a message in a t-shirt and you could have it in a billboard, and people will connect to it, and it didn't need to be someone who only cares, it's not the small intellectual circle of people who care about very serious art. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think there is a rule per se to make them big or small. I guess it's the context and also how I'm feeling in that moment. I don't know if that replies the question well.
It totally does, but it just also makes me think a little bit about the, not really branding, but just the visibility of things, which could be, you have fantastic hoodies, you have baseball caps, you have things that everyone can wear and join in, which is more democratic than the people who can have a canvas.
Yeah, I always think of myself as a maker more than an artist. I don't think that, I could never afford many of my works. And I think of course you can always look at them, you don't need to own something in order to enjoy it. But as I said at the very beginning, there is a lot of fun on making things and trying new things, which sometimes may go against me, as I say also before, a bit of everything, a lot of nothing, because I feel but are you, I think it's also misleading from the outside. I think some people may think but is she a photographer? Is she a fashion person? Is she an art person? But I guess what I try to say is that it doesn't matter. It's about making things, it's about creating messages, and trying to connect with people in, it may sound ambitious, but in as many forms as possible. I think it's ultimately about connecting and reminding.
It's a real compliment for this show and the other show that probably if you put this book in the middle of the show, it's the best box for the book, right? Because you can really understand so much from the about why this makes sense from the things on the wall.
But you've made, I mean, this is a fairly large painting on sale. You made some also for the exhibition at the Villa Noailles. Very, very large ones that almost look like banners. There's one that ended up as a double spread in the magazine, which is an artist book that you made at the Present Morning Times. In the magazine, because in a magazine or a newspaper, sorry, in a newspaper you have space for ads, so you created your own ads for your own newspaper in your own artist book for your brand that exists, that is Capitana. This whole blending of everything, what was the title? Everything all at once, you know?
Yeah, everything with everyone.
Yeah.
Everywhere, all of the time.
This is, I mean, it's actually everywhere, you know,
That's
in your work.
Yeah, I guess that's the goal. It's, I think recently they made a movie with a similar title, but I didn't like it at all. But anyways, yes, thought about it.
Could you just say a word about a fantastic painting that is hanging just up here, which is on canvas?
So I love advertising.
Yeah.
I love, you know, many artists when they have to work commercially, it sounds like they have to. I actually really, really enjoy it. And I think if I wasn't an artist, I would choose to be a copywriter. So this is, and when I started to go to art school, I started my own series. You know, they are made in different years and in different occasions of what I call imaginary adverts. So this one is called Imagination Investments. And it's a little bit inspired by ING Bank, I think it's called, with the big lion. It says like as farther than money will ever take you. So my point is that, you know, like your investments can grow as much as you want, as far as you're able to imagine your wealth. But in a more serious note, what I want to say is that, you know, there is like monetary wealth, but for me there is a wealth that is even more important than that, which is the wealth that you have in your imagination. Because really, as I say before, you can read books, they all add to imagination, you know. I don't think that a person who have the power to imagine different universes and different realities can ever truly be sad or not alive. So it's, I guess it's the logo of my bank. If I was the CEO of some...
And it's not a lion anymore, it's a unicorn.
Yes, sadly. Of course, because you need to have the imagination to see a unicorn.
Exactly, yeah. Now we have in the exhibition the whole point, perhaps, of this project, apart from the fact that it's the first exhibition that we do together at the gallery, we've done others outside, is to show visitors, everybody, not only just the diversity, all kinds of mediums, even different kinds of paintings, but how everything is merged, right?
Do any people have questions from the? Is that allowed?
I love questions. Questions is my favorite part. So please don't be shy. Okay, so much for my favorite part.
I need time to think of the question.
Okay, sorry.
It takes longer than that. Otherwise, I'll just keep reading random
Yeah,
pages.
you can.
Rather be losing and lost than found and bored. That's a good one. Richard Prince's lawyer.
Yeah.
Is that where you wanted to be?
I will enjoy that one.
That's a great one, because it's almost a Richard Prince joke.
Any questions from the floor?
No, I would say, okay, before you can think of a question, there's one photograph over there that comes from this long body of work that you called Navy, and this is Navy in 50 definitive photographs, and the title of it, which you hand wrote, is A New Kind of Freedom. And honestly, you know, we've been working with many artists, and the level of freedom you have in your work, in your practice, is, I mean, is really incredible. And I see it all the time. It's incredible, really.
Flattering. Well, I guess I'm in search for freedom all the time, and I guess like. Yeah, it's almost accidental. I don't. I wasn't aware that that's like the word that you get. But yeah, as I say before, the moment that you stop being scared about making mistakes, you know, like there is a lot of danger in freedom. We go back to the boat sculpture. Since I started doing it, I regretted the day in which I thought I had this great idea to make the boat, because it's been an absolute nightmare. And
the production was challenging, yes.
For you as well.
No, but the result is incredible. Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, of course, I've never done like a model boat from scratch. And many people will say, like, no, but like, how dare you? Like, there are professionals who do this. And I say that to myself as well. But I guess the freedom is in saying, let's try it. Yeah. It may not work, but at least you'll walk out with the feeling that you tried. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. Like, we put something else. And that's what it keeps my art alive and wanted me to try something else, because if you're really good at taking pictures but you just keep doing that one thing, it just becomes boring.
Do you just want to explain everybody, because the name of the boat is the Lacrimosa?
Yeah, so Lacrimosa is Latin for, well, in addition to being a funeral march, it means the one who cries. So the idea of, like, the poem behind the boat is that is the boat that is crying and is able to navigate the tears. Well, Lacrimosa actually is not necessarily one who cries, but it means the tearful one. Yeah. So the idea is that the boat can navigate away, and you very smartly pointed out, because at the beginning I was putting the boat facing the tsunami.
Yes, you didn't want that.
Jean-Kenta saying, no, the boat needs to, she needs to be sailing out of the, so that's the idea. I guess, like, I want to cry when I need to, but I want to be able to stay afloat, and the pain is necessary, but the beauty, I think, or at least in my case, is being able to suffer it and navigate it. And
the ocean is made of the tears.
Well, in some cases.
Yeah.
Yes.
You said a lot of things about the words and how, like, people can have this image when you're saying a word. For example, you're saying, like, a table. I will think about this. You will think about this. But of course, we have so many different, like, aspects of it. And my question is, when you do a photograph, do you feel like you're giving the text because you want the people to, like, in a way be, get the direction of the way of seeing this image? I know, for example, this is something funny because this moment was funny. You want to add this text so people will read it in that way? Or do you feel like sometimes it's just because at this moment it was this for you, this feeling, so you want to express this? I don't know if it's really clear, but
I think I understand.
It's more like, do you feel like if you don't put the text, maybe people won't have the right reading of the photograph?
I think some photographs don't require a text. There is enough with the photographs, but I feel like the message is complete with the text. But that is not to say, because if you think about the text that I write, I mean, this one is concrete, right? What I'm trying to say is, like, please look at the bucket. They are in a boat, but all they care about is the bucket. But then a new kind of freedom, yeah, there is someone jumping into the water, into freedom, but you can also open into, like, the interpretation is open, like, is she escaping? So I feel like with the subtitle, just say, like, yeah, she is escaping to freedom, or she's jumping into a sea of freedom. But I guess, like, I try not to be all the time as concrete, as not giving you the space to interpret how the words work with the image.
It's a poetry in the balance between the photograph and the text. Any other question?
When you're thinking about, like, a rhythm to the words or to creating a painting, how does that translate into your photography? Do they connect through, like, a pace of creation? Because I find with paintings that's so much of a labour, and then with photography, I guess that has its own process, and then words have a rhythm to them as well. How does that connect to you?
I think, as you pointed out, like different media have different rhythms. I find photography really instant, like, and I think photography for me is about freezing a moment in time. I actually say that I use photography mostly as a research tool, even though they end up being sometimes a final object. But you can observe the world better from a photograph than you can from reality. There are so many things going on at the same time that sometimes you can only look at what is really happening when you freeze time. And for me, photography is about that. In painting, as a painter yourself, I think you'll find the magic that a painting quite never looks as what you thought it would look. And for me, that's magical. And the thing about photographs need to happen in the instant, right? Painting, you know, sometimes I start a painting and then I go to do an assignment, and I feel like what it was my original idea changes through what is being happening on my life. So I feel like a painting always stands for like a longer period of time, and you can see time passing through a painting. And photography is the moment, is how it was now. Like if you take that photograph a second later, there is no one in the water. On the other hand, like for me, there is never an interest of like I've never been interested on painting something like that, because I think the photography is gonna give you the message better than the painting. But on the contrary, a painting sometimes cannot tell you the same things that a photograph will. So
I would just add one thing, because you say the photograph and the painting is different durations, and it's not just a detail, you shoot everything in film. And that's part of keeping the time and some magic, because you shoot, but you don't see it immediately. So even within photography, you keep the same relationship with time.
No, I think like what is magic about film, I mean, now like when I shoot commercials, it's almost the same as shooting digital in a way, because I shoot so many rolls and my lab is prepared and they give me back the results the next day. But I guess the beauty, especially in photographs like this, there is actually time passing. The choices are not as straightforward. It may be color, but having the opportunity to observe a photograph for such a long period of time in the darkroom definitely changes your relationship with it, and definitely changes the title. As I say, like probably when I took this photograph that I don't remember now, I was like, oh cute, the kids playing. And then by looking at it, I feel like, oh no, wait, there is actually like a swimming pool in the boat. So.
Any other question?
Are you doing a book signing?
We have a few copies of the book, and Coco can sign them for you. Actually, you have so many, I don't know if we have enough copies, but we do have many. A few. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Simon.
Please enjoy the art. Thank you for coming.